Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people who are interesting, like people like who watch the show like you, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and whatever it is we've decided to talk about. We'll be talking about is equal voice voting better? Better meaning better than existing systems or other speculations about how we can vote and tally votes and choose our president and those kinds of people. My co-host this evening to help me with the questioning, and I need help as you can tell, is David Delk, who is a producer in his own right. His show, The Populist Dialogues, is broadcast on cable access. And he's also the co-chair of the national organization, the Alliance for Democracy. And we're learning some more about you as we get into the show further on. And my guest is Jerry Spriggs, who I met before, but I've forgotten. And I'm going to be forgetting a lot tonight. How are you feeling, Jerry?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Are you
Good
nervous?
to be here. No, not terribly.
Then maybe that's why I'm nervous, because you're not, and I'm feeling it for you.
There you go. You take off the whole load. Thank you very much.
How are you feeling?
I'm doing just fine.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for asking me.
You betcha.
Yeah.
So let's get right into it. Is equal voice voting better? And the first half of the show, as you know, is what I call the bio, or Who Are You segment, where I'll be talking to Jerry about who he is personally, and not too personally, so that the viewers will have an idea where you're coming from when you talk about the subject for the show. And I'll say a few words about myself to model what the Who Are You segment is about. I'm Don Bay. I'm a retired clinical psychologist, born and raised in New Orleans. I was born in 1928, and I am married, and I'm second marriage. I have 5 daughters, my first marriage, and I belong to a bunch of progressive organizations, and I enjoy doing this show, and I'm looking forward to doing it for another 30 years. Is that okay?
How long have you done this show?
40 years.
I got it.
No, 15 years. 15 years.
I'll believe that.
So say a few words about yourself, David.
David.
This is horrible. What's going on, Mr. Director?
Okay.
So tell viewers who you are.
My name is David Delk, and I am a native Portlander, born in 1950. I've been here almost all my life, except for a few years in Spokane and in Seattle. And I have a partner named Tom. Mm-hmm. We've been together for 20 plus years.
That's a long time.
It is a long time, but it seems like a very short time. and so I'm very fortunate to have him in my life. And I'm very fortunate to have you as part of my life too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So besides that, I retired a couple years ago, so I have lots of time to do activist kinds of things, which I enjoy doing. And one of them is producing this and hosting a cable access program called Populist Dialogues, which and I got started doing that because of having been a guest and a guest host on this program. So you were my inspiration and my model. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's an excellent show. You get a chance to watch it. Watch the Populist Dialogues. There'll be a PSA later on about how you can watch it toward the end of the show. So I'm going to ask you some personal, direct questions. Okay.
Okay. I'll try to answer personally and directly.
I always have a trick question. You want to take it now or later?
I don't care.
Okay. If I would ask your best friend, who is Jerry, what would your best friend say? Jerry is what?
He's a happy-go-lucky, fun-filled fellow.
Oh.
No, I think people who know me know that I enjoy life, and I laugh a lot, and I like it, so okay. I'm pretty upbeat, hopeful. We talked about being hopeful before the show, and so I'm pretty optimistic, kind of an idealist, I guess. So.
Okay. This is going to be a kumbaya show.
It's a kumbaya show, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in 47 in North Dakota, and I was raised there on a farm in North Dakota. Yes.
And when did you leave?
I left in my early 20s and I went to California, spent a fair amount of time there in San Francisco, Sacramento, met my wife there in Sacramento, and we moved to San Diego, and then from San Diego moved over to Phoenix, Arizona, and then from Phoenix, Arizona here to Portland, Oregon area.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've traveled around a little bit.
Are you going to leave Portland or travel someplace else?
Oh no, I love Portland. I love it here.
Is there anything of interest to the viewers about your cultural heritage that was worth mentioning, or are you just plain American white bread?
I'm plain American white bread. I was raised in a Norwegian settlement in North Dakota, so you know, maybe the accent will come out once in a while there. So I got to be a little careful. I'm always prompted to speak a little faster than I do because I speak a little slow. But yeah, it's a great background. I had a great childhood. So.
How about a religious preference today? Is that an appropriate question?
Yeah, sure, it's appropriate. I'm a Unitarian Universalist, and I go to church at Atkinson in Oregon City. Yeah.
I'm also a Unitarian. I
Well,
go to church at First Church.
First
downtown.
Church. All right. Well, there you go.
Yep.
And I'm a recovering Catholic who's a humanist now, and I was a Unitarian before I became a humanist. Yeah.
Okay.
Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go.
Yeah.
And your formal education, would you say a few words about that?
Yeah, I got a Bachelor of Arts degree in Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota.
Yes.
Majored in philosophy and speech, or communication, they'd call it today. And then I got a master's degree in instructional design at National University in California. So.
Okay. And any other education worth mentioning other than formal education?
School of Hard Knocks, I guess.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
And before you retired, what did you do to pay the bills?
I was an instructional designer. So as an instructional designer, you can work in a lot of different arenas. For example, I started out working for a military contractor. First effort was to build anti-submarine warfare training for the Navy. And then I became the manager of the instructional design unit for the F-16 Air Force pilot training program. And then from there, I had my own business for a while. Well, I skipped a little step there. I worked for American Express for about 5 years, and then I had my own business in Phoenix, providing instructional design, technical writing, support services for like Motorola, Honeywell, American Express, Avnet, City of Tempe, different ones. And then one of my clients was up here in Portland, and they offered me a job I couldn't refuse, so I sold the business, came up here, and a few weeks later they sold the business and got rid of the training program. So there's where the School of Hard Knocks comes in. And, but it turned out to be a good thing. I picked up a contract with AutoNation and a few other places, and at the end of my career I was a manager of training at Hewlett-Packard. So, you know, things are good. It gave me a wide scope, a wide breadth of experience in a lot of different arenas. So it was a good choice.
So since you retired, you've been preparing your book, and what other things have you been doing since you retired?
Well, one of the things recently is my daughter has moved up with her family, so a grandfather of 2 here in the Portland area, and that's just a real joy. I got an 11-year-old grandson and a 2-year-old granddaughter, and they're just a kick. And then my son is living in Iowa, and I'm hoping to go see him in September because he's got a newborn boy, so we got to go see that. So that's been taking up a lot of my activity, and of course a lot of church work. I've been very involved at the church. So.
And what do you do at the church that's of interest?
Anything that I can disturb the situation, I guess. No, I'm.
Unitarian.
Yeah. I work with the fundraising committee. You know, like most churches, we're always in need of some more funding, so we got to do that sort of thing. I'm a member of the Worship Associates, which means that when somebody speaks, gives a sermon, I help out with the service in some way. I'm also on a search committee because right now we're looking for a settled minister. So that will continue for the next year. But that's a fun, exciting adventure, you might say, a lot of responsibility, but
course.
it's a lot of opportunity too. So.
And where is your church again?
It's in Oregon City, Atkinson Memorial Church in Oregon City.
And you have a partner who came here with you this evening.
My wife, right.
What do you think of her?
Oh, she's, the big question,
Look
Don,
right in that
is
camera and tell her.
what she thinks of me. That's the bigger question. She's amazing. Yeah,
Yeah,
she truly is.
she's a beautiful, beautiful lady.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, yeah. And you mentioned children and grandchildren. Would you characterize your political persuasion as right wing or left wing or Tea Party or what?
Oh yeah, on this show I'm a Tea Party. No, I'm
no, I'm straight lines.
Yeah. No, I'm a registered Democrat, and but I think I'm a moderate liberal. You know, because I've spent a lot of years in what we would call red states. You know, Republican-dominant states such as North Dakota. That's where my roots are. I spent a lot of years in Arizona, and so you know, it allows you to be a little bit balanced in your thinking, I would hope, or at least appreciate some of the perspectives that are there. That's why this book is so important to me, is because we are not a red and blue country, we are a purple country. So
This book, Equal Voice Voting, you're going to be talking more about that in the second half of the show, but it's a chance to show it now. We'll show it again later on so that
sure.
viewers know where to go to buy it and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I've read it too, and it's full of charts and like that, and it's enjoyable reading to the extent that you don't get too involved in the graphs and charts.
Okay.
And memberships in political, social, or civic organizations, do you belong to any of those things other than your Unitarian Church activities?
No, not currently, I do not. Yeah.
And do you have any questions for Jerry now about who he is personally?
Well, hearing your background being in North Dakota actually gives me a little perspective on your book and some of the, so we'll come back to that a little later on. But yeah, I didn't know you were a Unitarian, so that's really great. How long have you been a Unitarian?
Let's see, it's about 12, 13 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's about how long I have also been,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
What were you before that?
Basically nothing, but I was raised Lutheran, and quite strong Lutheran. And Concordia College in Moorhead is a Lutheran school. And my first intent going to that school was to go to the seminary and be a minister. And then I just, you know, you come to a point where I did not agree with the theology, and so I had to kind of part my ways, and that's when I was a little bit lost for a few years. And then my wife found me and, you know, did this rescue mission, so I'm okay.
She saved you.
Yeah.
It reminds me of in my teens, I went to the seminary for a weekend to confirm that I was really had a calling. Then I realized I was going to have difficulty getting over the normal behaviors of a teenage boy, and I couldn't be a priest, and all this chastity stuff, forget about it. I'm not going to be a priest.
Yeah.
So I went out in the world and became wicked.
Yeah. Became wicked. Okay.
So how is that piece that we're preparing? Is it up? All right. Any more questions or comments for Jerry before we go to the break?
No, I can't think of anything right offhand.
Okay. Why not?
Because, this is the only thing that I ever thought that I had in common with President Bush, was that President Bush was known for not asking questions. And I also am not a good question answerer or asker, which is odd for someone who's hosting an interview program. But I'm not good at asking questions, and sometimes I'm not very good at providing answers either. But
but you're a good listener.
I am a good listener. Yes,
He's good at something.
Yes.
So let us take a little early break so that we can. I see the video is ready, so we can put up that video. It's about. Amending the Constitution, right?
Yes.
And it talks about corporations are not persons and money is not speech. And our good friend Jeff Holland made it for us. So we're going to show it now, and it's very, very important. So look closely and don't take your break yet until you watch it. Can we do that now?
This nation was conceived as a constitutional democracy.
We want democracy.
This means of, by, and for the people.
Every citizen, not just the fat cats.
Fairness. We just want fairness.
We don't have that.
Not even close. Wall Street, big business, the media.
Too much corruption. Our government belongs to us.
We need government to be honest and transparent.
Elected politicians are supposed to represent us.
Instead, they're stuffing their pockets big time.
Legalized bribery, that's what I call it.
Corporations and the wealthy use their money and influence to shape the world they want, without regulation, without taxation on them, without regard for the consequences of their actions.
Corruption is the illness. There is a cure. It's a constitutional amendment that says this: as a citizen, you have one vote. It does not give you the right to use your money to pervert our political process.
The constitutional amendment must also say this: only flesh and blood human beings are people. Corporations are not people. They are accountable to the people and must earn the people's trust.
A group called Move to Amend has as its single mission the adoption of a new constitutional amendment.
A 28 amendment that says very specifically that money is not speech and corporations are not people.
A 28 amendment. That's what we need.
Whatever your cause, this is a big part of the solution.
It's going to happen.
Join us. Help to amend the Constitution.
If you care about the future, this is how you can make a difference.
We are Moved to Amend.
We are moved to amend.
We are moved to amend.
We want a better world. This is how we make a difference.
Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about tonight. And we're talking about equal voice voting. The question is equal voice voting better? And perhaps we'll have some appreciation or some answer for that question by the time the program is over, the interview is over. And I have a question that we may not have an answer for right now, and I want to ask you, Jerry. Can the results of any voting system have any validity as long as we have a two-party monopoly government and the choices we vote for are determined by the money of the ruling elite? Shall I read that again?
Please.
Can the results of any voting system have any validity as long as we have a two-party monopoly government and the choices we vote for are determined by the money of the ruling elite? Is that a valid question?
I think it's a very valid question. I think that as long as you have money corrupting the system as we do, we have a real problem. So while I'm trying to fix a process, there's other things that impinge upon the whole problems that we have. So this is not a cure-all for everything we're doing. But yeah, well, you kind of nail it. I think a two-party system, sometimes we need that third voice. We need to have money out of the system in order to level the playing field. You know, it's, you know, money is not a voice.
Let's let David start off with a question.
So my question is, the two-party system that we have is a direct result, or I think is a direct result of the fact that we have winner-take-all elections. And I know that's something you focus on your book and part of the critique that you do. So talk about that.
Well, yeah, right now the way our Electoral College is set up is that it's a winner-takes-all approach, meaning that whichever candidate garners the most votes within a state, they get all the electoral votes of that state. Even Maine and Nebraska, which use congressional district voting, they vote by districts rather than by the state per se, but they are still a winner-takes-all. So even you can still get hidden within those districts. So
the Electoral College votes that any particular state has is determined by the number of Congress people they have, plus 2 for the 2 senators. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, the representatives plus their senators as well.
Right. So in the case of Nebraska, where they do it on congressional district, how do they determine those 2 senatorial votes? Who gets those?
They have whoever wins the most districts gets the 2 votes.
Oh, okay.
So it's
okay.
You know.
Okay. So talk about. Give us a little more background about what the problems are of the current Electoral College system that we have.
Well, you really got to the core of it when you talk about the winner-takes-all approach, because given any state, let's take Oregon for a grand example. We get 7 electoral votes here, okay, because we have 5 representatives and 2 senators, all right, so, and that translates to 7 electoral votes. And whichever candidate wins the most gets all those votes. In this last election, Obama got 7 votes. We're known as a blue state, okay, because of that kind of arrangement. However, if you really counted up the votes, and if you used my system, Obama would have got 4, and Romney would have got 3. In other words, there's a big chunk of people out there who are not being heard, whether it's red or blue state, okay, because it goes back and forth, and that's just ignoring the voice of the people. We just talked about corporations and so on, and we're not hearing the voice of the people. Same thing is in this situation. We're not hearing the voice of the people. And back to your other question, is that then feeds into a 2-party system. A third party has an awful time getting enough votes to jump that hurdle so that they could get electoral count within the state.
Yeah. I'm wondering when a third party actually got an Electoral College vote. When was the last? Do you have any idea?
Well,
I'm going to say it was probably in the late '60s, but I don't know if that's the case.
Oh God, the man's name just came out. No, it was in the '80s. There was some. I'd have to go back to the numbers.
That's a detail.
Yeah, but that's
right,
a detail.
Yeah.
But the point is well taken, because they really do collect a lot of votes, but they never bubble up to where they matter.
Okay. Yeah.
Equal voice, meaning all voices can be heard. By revising the existing system and using your system to count the votes, then everybody's voice would be heard, because it's proportional representation, kind of.
Sure, you get a proportional representation, so all the candidates too get to be represented as they should be. So it's you know, we have a real problem with voter turnout in this country. In the last election, more than 40% of voters did not vote.
In the last presidential election.
In the last presidential election.
40%.
And you take that, that's over 88 million people did not vote.
How can we say we have a democracy then if that percentage of the people don't vote?
Yeah. And then if you add to that the 56 million people who voted for the candidate that did not carry their state, okay, you have 144.7 million people, registered voters, that did not count or did not participate in the Electoral College results in this past election. That's a huge problem. That's 2/3 of the registered voters. We're very concerned today about voter suppression or that sort of thing, people not registering and so on. This is a huge problem.
Do you really think that people don't vote because they're concerned about the Electoral College? I think most people have no idea what the Electoral College is. They don't vote for other reasons than because of the Electoral College.
Great question. It's a great question. I have talked to people in Oregon who are Democrats and say, you know, why should I vote? Because there's enough Democrats to carry my voice. I've talked to Republicans in this state and they say, why should I vote? I know it won't count. So there's that kind of, feeds that kind of apathy. So I think some people have broken the code. 40% though, you're absolutely correct, Dave, is that there's a lot of people that just don't care anymore. They, you know, they're just disengaged from the system. I'm not saying that what I have will cure that, but if you know that your vote really matters because your candidate can get 1 or 2 more electoral votes this year, you just might go to the polls. I don't know, but wouldn't it be nice to at least cut that 40%, say, down to 20%?
Isn't it Australia that has a rule, a law that says you've got to vote, otherwise you get fined? Which country is that?
Well, there's actually quite a few countries that have mandatory voting, right? Yeah, I know, and I don't know why I know this, but Peru is one of them, where everybody, well, because I have a friend who's an American who was living in Peru, and National Election Day, everybody went to the polls.
And some countries, people risk their lives to vote.
Yeah.
Think of that. We try to make it convenient so we don't even have to go to the polls. We just get mailed the ballot and we'll do you know, whatever.
People here have risked their lives in order to vote.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Digression. Today's the anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the killing of Schwerner and Goodman and what's her name? Those 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi.
Was it Tanner or something? Yeah, right. Yeah.
It just came to mind now. It was on the news today.
Yes.
So talking about voting and the importance of voting, but what do you think of? Is it possible to have that kind of a law in America, where you have to vote? It's a law. Do you think we could ever have that happen here, or is it a good idea?
Well, see, I'm the guy glass full, half full kind of person, so anything is possible, right? I mean, you got to start with that.
Sure.
But is it plausible? I don't know if it's plausible. People would probably rebel against that. I don't know. It's just, I would have to say that, that would probably be a stretch. What do you think, Dave? Since you don't ask questions, I'll ask you questions.
Thank you very much. I don't think that we would ever see a law in the United States, as long as we're a democracy, that would require people to vote. I just don't see that. I don't see that. I don't even think it's desirable. It's like, you know, part of the electoral process is for people to be engaged. What we need to do is figure out why people aren't engaged in these decisions. And you know, part of it is that they have learned that voting doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And for a variety of reasons. They're bombarded by negative ads that don't inform, that don't create an awareness of what the real options are, and so they don't vote. The system is, and more so now than it has been, is getting more to the point where there are obstacles to people voting. Instead of tearing obstacles down, we're building them up. And so those are all reasons why people don't vote. The other thing is that we have people that just work too much and get distracted by TV programs that don't inform them and don't engage them.
Well, there's an important point when you say inform them, because I think people by and large get confused. They don't know what is the truth. You know, the ads that come out, they're so misleading and so slanted and so biased and outright lies a lot of times. So people don't know, well, who are we voting for and what are we voting for? I mean, it's a real dire question. So,
yeah.
So with equal voice voting, you think people would be more likely to vote if there were equal voice voting, among other things, but that would be important enough.
I would like to think so. Okay, because again, let's come back to Oregon. If we had a proportional voting system like equal voice voting is proposing, you'd have a number of Republicans that would vote that never voted before. Okay, they would turn out, I would think. Okay, if that's the case, then I think the Democrats would rally and say, by golly, we got to have more people turn out too so that we can counter that push. So what that would happen is over time, I would project that there would be more and more people voting. Is that a truth? I don't know. You know, we don't know that. That's just projection.
What about the other alternative method of counting votes? You have some knowledge about that.
Yeah, so
the top 2 or top 3 or something?
Well, in terms of the Electoral College, the other alternative that is proposed, of course, is the national popular vote,
right?
Which says that whichever candidate gets the largest number of popular votes is going to be is going to be elected to office, and it says that. And so this national popular vote has a specific mechanism of doing that, and it's a way of getting around the Electoral College. So rather than saying that we need to eliminate the Electoral College is still there, but certain numbers of states enter an agreement to all vote for whoever receives the most popular votes, and so that I think is more congruent with the idea of one person, one vote, as opposed to yours. And the reason I say that, in particular, I think of small population, low population states, where you have one representative or 2 representatives and 2 senators, and those votes under your system would count more than in a high population state, which I know that one of your objectives from looking at your book and your website is that you want to be sure that rural voters count,
right,
and their voices are heard.
Okay. So you said a bunch there.
Yes,
and
I know.
And
sorry.
I almost need to take notes. Okay. But one of the things you said is the National Popular Vote Bill is a way to get around the Electoral College, and that's exactly right. Which should raise some flags for you immediately, saying, why do you have to get around something for it? The Electoral College will work beautifully if you know how to implement it. And equal voice voting will work with the Electoral College just fine. Now, the popular vote bill, if that went through, I'll tell you, I can promise you, I couldn't promise you if you have increased voter turnout, I can promise you, you will have a disaster. Like I told our Secretary of State, it will work the first time. The second time you want voter apathy to hit, it'll really hit the second time. Here's why. The states that would be in that compact would take the day, and your electoral vote imbalance would be somewhere in the 400s to 80 something. Regardless of how close the popular vote bill would be. Okay, I've run the numbers on a number of different sequences, and it's like, oh my God, this is not a uniformly balanced system. It will just tip the scales. If you run out some what-if scenarios in a number of different ways, you will see that happening. So that's one concern. The popular vote, whether it's the national popular vote or just the popular vote in itself, it will give attention to where the people are, right? So right today, we have half the population living in 9 states. Guess where your swing states will be? National Popular Vote Bill says, oh, we'll get away from the swing states. No, you won't. It will be definitely there. Another third of the population live in the other 16 states, and only a sixth of the population lives in 25 states. So all of a sudden, you've got this huge imbalance. Oregon might as well pack it up and not be involved.
But Oregon already is disregarded in the electoral system that we have now.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm saying the National Popular Vote Bill will not fix that. Equal voice voting would, because all of a sudden it would be, okay, it's going to matter. Are we going to get 3-4 split, 5-2 split, 6-1 split? It would matter.
How about the instant runoff method of elections? Whether the top vote getters would then have a runoff. How does that work?
Well, instant runoff voting allows you, the voter, to vote for more than one candidate,
Yes,
and you rank the candidates by your preference for them. So Al Gore number 1, George Bush number 2, and so forth. And then
but
if someone
matter then.
well, the parties still matter, but it's not. I'm not sure how you would do that and still have the electoral college. You'd have to do something. You'd still have to have something else.
Yeah, you'd have to have quite a mechanism. It could be done.
Right.
I know you can fix this somehow so that you could make that happen. But, but
you
you're
make
right.
almost anything done with computers, but then do you trust it? Right, yeah. So if we were going to go with the equal voice voting, how does that actually get implemented? Does that get implemented on a state basis or national? Or
National Popular Vote Bill does not require a constitutional amendment.
Right.
That's a beautiful thing about it. Okay, it's about the only beautiful thing about it. Equal voice voting doesn't either. Each state has the freedom to work with the Electoral College as they see fit. So it would be on a state-by-state basis that it would be changed. Now there's the challenge. Okay, so for example, let's run down to Salem, and I talked to the legislators in this state, and I talked to Democrats. Do those legislators have the political will to say, let's use a fair system instead of one that we have dominant control today? And to that I say, and that flips. If you go to a red state, it would be the same thing. The Republicans would not be prone to do that. But if you look at a state's history and say, okay, how continuous have you voted Democrat or Republican or Green Party or some other party, you see that it is not consistent throughout the ages. Things change. For example, in the South, let's take Georgia, for example. You think of them as being very red, but yet they voted for Jimmy Carter. He was Democrat. They voted for Clinton. He was Democrat from Arkansas. You get somebody who's local, all of a sudden the scales tip. You don't have that control. So this all or nothing kind of approach to things is very risky. Instead of listening to the people and hearing what they really want and who they're really voting for, you try to control the reins of this horse. I think it's kind of tough.
Yeah. And so, I agree with you on the problem. And I also agree with you on the analysis that if you go to Salem and you ask the Democrats to dilute the state's votes, at least in their perspective, they're going to say no.
We're talking about Oregon now, Salem,
Yeah, Oregon, right, yeah. And so if they're going to say no, then how are you going to do this?
You just got to keep trying. How do you get anything done? I mean, if you have a good idea, it's put upon you to push it, okay? To do anything less than your best is to spoil the talent, so to speak. That's you've got to push it. You've got to seize the opportunity. Senator Devlin is a Democrat in this state, and he's willing to work with me to help me get it introduced. That doesn't mean that he's going to vote for it. That doesn't mean he's put his neck on the line, but at least he's politically strong enough to say, hey, let's give this a listen. And you need a number of people like that to say, let's listen to this. Let's pay attention, because what we're doing today is not fair. It is not equal.
What are the moneyed interests going to think about your proposal?
I don't know. I really don't. And I wish I had an answer for that. I'm sure there's going to be opposition. I am not so naive to think that this is a slam dunk by any stretch. But one of my goals is to raise the conversation, to show people that there are alternatives and there's different ways of looking at things, and we don't have to put up with the tried and true and that we've had before that does not serve the people. When the people are not being heard, we've got a problem.
But the money and interest are going to be in the background working to keep their power, their control over what's going on, no matter which system we have.
Exactly, yeah. No, I know that. I know that.
So I would suggest that you take this from the national popular vote, and what they want to do, and what their mechanism for doing this is to get states to come to agreement and compact. And when they have enough votes, then it is instituted. So if I were you and I were going down to Oregon legislature, I would say to them, write the bill so that Oregon doesn't do it just by itself, but Oregon passes it, and then Oregon's law will only go into effect when Washington, Idaho, and California and Nevada also do it. Because otherwise you have this disadvantaging in the current system.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. I've thought of that. I don't know how exactly you could implement that. That'd be very hard because it's not like it's a fixed set of numbers. For example, last election, it was using my system, it had been a 3-4 split, right? What will it be next time? Could be 5-2. It could be, it could be different. And other states, larger states, will have even more of a swing, in how it goes. So there are no guarantees, and politicians love guarantees, right? I mean, they want to be on terra firma. So I'm proposing something that's a little squishy, and it's a little hard politically, and I realize that. So it's a real challenge. And yet there's a number of politicians across the country who have really expressed an interest in this already. They were saying, whoa, there's something here for everybody, so.
Yeah. The other problem that I see with your suggestion is that, and I've already touched on this, is that it really gives voters in rural states a larger leg up, and their votes count for more. And for myself, I really do believe that the system, whatever we end up with, needs to count each vote equally.
Okay, so what you're saying then is that the way we have our Congress is flawed as well.
Yes, it is. Almost definitely.
So what we have in our Congress is we have the population represented by representatives, and we have the states represented by the 2 senators. Okay, so that's exactly what is mirrored in here. Okay, now obviously we're in different camps. Okay, because I don't think the popular vote should rule the day, because you're going to have a lot of rural America not represented in that. I mean, really not. And so you need to have some balance. However, having said that, I went back 9 elections through all this. You'd be amazed at how close the results come out to the popular vote. It is just tremendously amazing how close it is. I mean, the 2000 election, for example, gave the vote to Gore, because that's who won the popular vote.
Yes, right.
So it isn't as scary as you think it is. When you say, oh, well, we got to have every person have 1 vote, every person needs a vote, and you get that disproportion of representation. But if you play it out, it really isn't all that bad.
So in that 2000 election with Bush versus Gore, if we had done it with the national popular vote, then Gore would have won, because he in fact did get the most popular votes. Would he have won if we had used your system?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, okay.
But by a very narrow margin.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it was a very narrow margin.
Yeah.
In any case, it was very narrow. Right. Yeah. The unfortunate thing was that, of course, the Supreme Court didn't allow them to count the votes.
That's a whole other thing.
Yeah, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, have we exhausted the discussion about do we have an answer for the question? Is your system is it the best approach to voting for the future in America?
Well, obviously, I would say yes. Okay, but now remember, I'm just an individual. I'm a retired guy out here. I'm not a political maven by any means, you know. So I'm just looking at it as a gamemanship, as a numbers kind of thing. But I don't know. Do people understand what equal voice voting is? We really haven't described the formula.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the basis of the whole thing is really simple. When people hear math, they go, oh, it's a formula. It's really simple because each state will take their popular vote and divide that number, by the electoral votes they're allocated. For example, Oregon gets 7. So whatever number the popular vote is in aggregate in the state is divided by 7, and that gives you a value. And as a candidate earns enough votes to equal that value, they get an electoral vote. Okay? It's that simple. It's really, in the computer age, it's really simple. So it's not hard at all.
With that, then a third-party candidate could potentially actually get some electoral college votes. So, so you've got a little plus on that one for me.
Okay. All right. Good. Good.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we want to part friends here.
Yes. Yeah, I'm sure we will.
Yeah.
So actually, that was the question I was going to ask: was how would this affect third parties or minor parties?
Yeah.
So
It would give them a voice. And as it does that not challenge the predominant two parties, because they haven't had to worry about a third party much anymore?
No, they've gamed the system quite well.
Yeah. So now, if they all of a sudden there's this voice over here saying, well, there's this other faction, they got to pay attention. Maybe they got to change a few planks in their system or whatever, you know? I don't know.
Oh, well, it's really, I'm not sure what we're talking about, because there's really not really two parties as such in this country anymore. There are two wings of the same party. The Republicans and Democrats, their performance on the world scene, there's no serious difference between the two. So it seems to me to have our country be more democratic, to follow our philosophy, we need to do something about the entire system, something radical, such that people's voices are heard, no matter which system we have of counting votes and electoral college and that sort of a thing. I'm just so frustrated with what's going on now, since our voices are not being heard. And I'm looking at the election coming up, and whoever the Democrats put up with, other Republicans put up, is it going to make a difference? Is there a remote chance that what's her name, Bernie Sanders, is going to be a viable candidate? Elizabeth Warren, for example, an alternative to the two wings of the same corporate party. I'm looking for some sort of an answer that is probably impossible to imagine right now, sort of some totally unexpected calamity, or the Earth stops rotating or something. Help me with my frustration and disappointment and negative thinking about where America is today in terms of having leaders who represent our voices by and large.
Well, Don, it would take a much bigger book than what I wrote. No, I don't know. I understand your frustration. I mean, because you feel like leaders aren't leading anymore, and it is frustrating. I don't have an answer for that sort of thing, but.
Are there any leaders in other countries around the world that are more successful in representing the people with voices? So socialist countries of Northern Europe, for example, or even Germany or France.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. It seems like some of the European countries have systems that represent people better, but most of those European countries are coming under the same corporate dominance that we are under, and and it's that corporate dominance that really gets to the point. Is the cause for why people don't vote, is because they don't really feel like the decisions are made through the electoral process, through the political process. They're made in the back rooms. And unfortunately, that is more and more becoming the case in Europe, as it is here. That's not a very encouraging answer, but
does it come down to, bottom line, the kind of capitalism practiced in this country versus some sort of idealized socialism, as Bernie Sanders or a few other people, very few people in our government espouse, some sort of democratic socialism to replace the kind of monopoly capitalism? We stand a better chance of having the ordinary citizens' voices heard and living up more to our promise of democracy and caring about each other.
We really do need to figure out how to get more of the decisions that are made in the economic sphere into the political sphere, where we can all make, and have real meaningful conversations. And one of the things I think of right now that we are not talking about at all is that, since the Great Recession and the loss of all the jobs, and then the corporations, the banks and so forth have done very well in the recovery, but they haven't created jobs as a result. And what they've done instead is they have invested in more and more automation, in robotics and so forth. So a lot of companies that have offshored their jobs because of the trade agreements are now starting to come back to America, and we're really happy to see that. But they're not creating jobs when they come back, because they're investing in robotics and automation to do the jobs. And so we really need to have a political conversation about this, and how do we move forward, because we're going to have more and more people sinking to the bottom. So that's just one of the questions that we should be having a very vigorous conversation about, and it's not talked about at all.
See, I think you're hitting a point just in that statement, is saying we need to have a conversation about it. I think that's going to be a very saving factor for us if we get more people talking. And as long as we can get people engaged and talking and thinking and exchanging ideas, things will go for the better, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a seer.
Well, we also need to get people so they have decision-making abilities and power, because having a conversation and talking, I can go to a cafe and talk to somebody, and it makes absolutely no difference at all.
Oh, that's not true. There we disagree. You talk to me in
they're waiting for it.
Yeah. You talk to me in a coffee shop, and I walk away and say, God, Dave, he really disturbed me. Don, do you hear what Dave just said? Blah, 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 blah. What do you think? Oh, you agree with him? What's the deal here? All of a sudden, now I have to rethink my position a little bit. And it trickles out little bit by little bit. And so my book, equal voice voting here, it may not be the solution for the entire United States, and it might not be the panacea that I would really like to see it be. But if I can raise the conversation so people are saying, wow, we can think about this differently. And it doesn't take a lot of movement to get some wonderful consequences out of this. And if we can do that, then we will succeed. Then hope is alive.
Yeah, hope is alive. I do totally want hope to be alive. But at the same time, I will remind you that when we elected Obama, we voted for hope. I didn't vote for it, but we did vote for hope. And it's not very alive.
So you gave up the hope?
I didn't have that hope in the first place.
Oh, okay.
Personally, when I go to the polls, I vote on policy, not on something nebulous like hope.
But you're not. Everybody doesn't vote like that. They do vote on those hooks.
Yes, they do.
And they pay for those hooks, and then we go back to the money situation. It's circular.
So time is running out for us now, and let's just wind down. And final thoughts or comments that the audience need to consider what happened in our discussion here and what you talked about. You would want to address the audience and tell them what your final thoughts are about anything at all.
About anything at all? Well, these are two wonderful guys. Do I say that, something like that? And they really are.
Look at the camera.
Oh, there's the camera. Okay. This has been an exciting thing interview very different than what I had anticipated, because I thought we'd be focused on the system and the results and the da-da-da-da-da. But you see how interwoven everything is. It's a very complex world we live in. And I just would really appreciate if people would look at the equal voice voting. You can get it on Amazon.com and just look at the idea and see if that doesn't make sense to you, because I really believe that we need to do something. When we have 60% of the people voting, 40% not, we got a problem in this world. And then of that 60%, only half of those matter in the process. The problem expands. So
okay, well, that's enough for you. David, a final comment before we sign off?
Yeah, I would like to also encourage people to actually buy his book.
Yes.
And to read it and consider it. And we do need to do something about the Electoral College. I don't think that we're quite in agreement on what that should be, but we do. And his book does outline some of the, the dynamics of the problem, and it needs to be thought about.
And
right?
thank you so much for coming on. And they're going to yell at me now if we don't do some public service announcements. Can we do those, Mr. Director? To get my local broadcast schedule, go to my website, www.donbam.com, and click on Present Day Activities. The next PSA, watch my shows on the web, go to Don Bam YouTube and click on a particular show. Don Bam YouTube, there's hundreds of shows on there, all kinds of interviews. You'll find something to suit your interests. The ACLU, without the American Civil Liberties Union, civil liberties would be further down the tubes than they are. Go to that website and learn more about the ACLU. To get Dr. Don Show's broadcast by other stations where you're watching in other parts of the country, go to pegmedia.org and follow the instructions there on how to have your local cable access station broadcast locally where you are, instead of having to go to the internet to see my shows. Ending corporate personhood, that's my big interest right now. Go to movetoamend.org to end corporate personhood and take our country back. Thanks for watching. Remember, KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind and be friendly. And be charitable to you too, and to you too, and especially you.
And you.
And you. Thanks again for watching. Good night. See you next time. Bye-bye.